which do you think is better, wholesale or online arbitrage, okay? So to answer Derek's question specifically, what do I like better, online arbitrage or wholesale? Honestly, I like them both, okay? And I know that's not the answer that a lot of people are looking for online arbitrage and wholesale specifically, but for me personally, I don't look at them as different, okay? They are a little bit different because obviously with online arbitrage, you're profiting off of the discrepancy in a marketplace, right? For example, let's say, and this is a bad example, but let's say this highlighter sold on eBay, and there's many ways to do this, right? But let's say this highlighter sold on eBay for $5, then it sold the same exact highlighter sold on Amazon for $20. Online arbitrage is buying it on eBay, making the $15 difference by selling it back on Amazon, right? It's online arbitrage 101. There's a million ways to do online arbitrage, especially with software, and actually turn it into a legitimate business that pays you every single month and scales it up. So I like that a lot, but wholesale is really just reselling in a nutshell to me as well, right? I look at them both as like just reselling, okay? Now wholesale is a little bit more scalable. You need a little bit more money to get started. I'm going to kind of outline the specifics of each here in a second, but really it's just another way to resell, right? The only difference that I see is that you need a little bit more money to start. It's a little bit more of like an actual business, right? So it's not just like buying and profiting off the differences. You're buying into a lot of products in one potential listing and doing that over and over again and building up an actual like resale business. But you also need a reseller's permit. There's a million different names for that actual, business license, a wholesale license, a reseller's permit. There's like literally 10 to 20. So to sell liquidation, to buy from liquidation companies, to sell wholesale and buy from wholesale companies, you do need a reseller's permit, okay? So the benefits of online arbitrage, in my opinion, the way I see it, and there's probably 6 different ways or 5 different ways, I guess, to do online arbitrage that I recommend. But the benefit of online arbitrage is like, you really aren't attached to one listing, in my opinion, right? And you really can kind of start with $10 or you can start with a couple $1,000. So it really kind of gives you the freedom essentially to pick and choose your battles, pick and choose where you're gonna invest your money for not guaranteed returns, because nothing's guaranteed, especially on Amazon, because certain things can change from time to time, the competition, the price, a lot of different things, right? But it really kind of gives you that freedom as you get better and better at it to buy on one marketplace with, pretty much not assurances, but like a good chance to make a lot of money with that product on another marketplace, okay? Especially if you're using software, especially if you're very good and very quick with it, and you've pretty much nailed down how to actually do that, okay? So the benefit of something like online arbitrage is there are ways to start with like $5, $10, and then slowly kind of build that $10 into $50, that $50 into $100 or $150, that $150 into a couple $100, into a couple $1,000, etc., okay? It does depending on the business model, and there are online arbitrage business models that are very, very scalable. A couple that come to mind are like retail website sourcing with like software like SourceMogul, for example. Also like books and sourcing books with a software like Zen Arbitrage or eFlip. Also a great way to do it. So that's another very, very scalable online arbitrage business model. So you have both ends of the spectrum, right? You have very, very beginner friendly where you're not investing a lot of money at all, and you're just slowly kind of building up your money into more money, into more money, and more money, and that getting that snowball, that metaphorical snowball rolling into a lot of money, which then you can put into wholesale or put into a more scalable online arbitrage business or invest somewhere else or whatever you want to do, right? So online arbitrage has that benefit going for it. It also has the benefit of it that you're not attached to one listing, right? So with like private label, there's a lot of benefits to private label, where it's like you go out and you create your own listing and your own your own brand on Amazon. You get a product manufactured a lot of times from overseas, and then you try to rank that listing on Amazon and sell it long term and get organic traffic and also sell with PPC, right? The benefit of online arbitrage versus private label is like you're not attached to that one listing, right? So like, God forbid something happens where like you're late to market and you have a bunch of competitors during private label, right? When doing private label, or somebody tanks the price and you can no longer sell it at that price. You're not like career long invested in that listing, with online arbitrage, right? Instead, you can literally hop around from listing to listing. So as listings become good and as competition kind of drops and as prices increase, you can hop on those listings and avoid the other ones that aren't, right? It really gives you the flexibility and the freedom to pick and choose your battles. And because of that, I like that a lot better for me, okay? There are people out there that like private label a lot better, and I know that's not what we're talking about in this video, but I just want to kind of outline the importance of not necessarily being attached to one listing, okay? Now, obviously, the benefit of being attached to one listing, whether you're doing private label or wholesale, because a lot of wholesale you are going to be attached because you're buying more inventory into certain listings, you're going to be attached more to a listing a lot like private label for an extended period of time, right? Not for like years, but maybe for like a couple weeks to a couple months, depending on how much inventory you're buying, okay? So that has its benefit as well, because if you're invested in a listing that's very, very good, right, where the competition is down, the price is relatively good, you bought into a product in bulk, relatively cheap, and you've solidified your margin, that can also be a benefit as well. Although if for whatever reason, a lot of other people that you weren't anticipating come on as like other private label products, right? Or in wholesale's example, actually come on and buy into that listing as well and then tank the price, you're shit out of luck, right? Because then you're attached to that listing, you have all that inventory that you need to sell, and you either need to liquidate and sell it at a loss or like very, very small profit margin now, or you need to wait long term till the price goes back up and a lot of people sell off their inventory for you to actually make your money back, okay? So both of them have their benefits and their drawbacks. I don't like to pick one because I don't literally sit here and be like, I'm the online arbitrage guy, right? Or I'm the wholesale guy, right? I literally use them all as like metaphorical tools in my reselling tool belt, and that's the way that I look at them, okay? So I would say depending on where you're at in the process, one might be better or worse for you, okay? Do you have a lot of money to start? Are you looking to rank potentially long-term into a listing here and there? Are you looking to do a more hands-off business, like a lot like wholesale would be, because you can source with software, and then your wholesale supplier is going to do all the packing and the shipping into FBA for you, which FBA, Amazon FBA is obviously going to do all the fulfillment, distribution, and customer service for you. So it's a lot more hands-off, but one of the drawbacks of wholesale is you have to spend a lot more money into it, right? You're probably looking at a couple grand at least to start a wholesale business. At the very, very, very minimum, I usually tell people you need at least $1,000, but that's honestly at the minimum, and it's gonna be, it's not tough because you can just buy into a listing or two, but that's kind of the very bare minimum in my opinion, okay? So you have to ask yourself, do you have experience? Because if you don't have experience, I wouldn't go with wholesale, right? I would start with online arbitrage, because if you don't have experience and you don't have a lot of money, or if you have a lot of money and you don't have a lot of experience, either way, online arbitrage is a great way to learn the Amazon platform and other platforms like eBay, Poshmark, and Mercari, for example, and a number of other ones. Learn a lot about reselling in general and how it's approached so that you can take all those lessons and then bring them into wholesale and scale your business that way, okay? So those are basically the benefits and the drawbacks of both. To recap, wholesale, you need a lot of money to start. You also are going to be attached to a listing for a long period of time, which can be a good thing or a bad thing. It's a little bit more scalable. It's a lot more hands-off, meaning you don't have to spend a lot of hours or a lot of your time. Although a lot of times with wholesale, your margins are going to be a little bit lower than they would be a lot of times with online arbitrage. With online arbitrage, like I said, there's many ways to do online arbitrage. So there's many ways to do online arbitrage, but you can start with little money, you can start with a lot of money. There's very, very beginner-friendly business models for online arbitrage. And there's also very scalable and more advanced with software business models. So they both have their benefits, their drawbacks, and obviously another benefit of online arbitrage, to recap as well, is that you're not attached to a listing, right? God forbid you buy a couple pieces of inventory for online arbitrage and a bunch of people start being your competition or the price tanks. You're not really out that much money or that much profit because you're not into that listing very much, right? Most of the time. So that's my opinion on what I think is better, for you specifically, or for other people watching this video. If you're kind of strapped for ideas and you're kind of trying to ask yourself which one's better for me.